Hello and welcome to this presentation of the WACV paper Bridging Generalization Gaps in High Content Imaging through Online Self-Supervised Domain Adaptation. The motivation behind this paper was to address generalization gaps and challenges in high content imaging. As a brief background, high content imaging is an important and valuable tool in modern drug discovery, enabling high-resolution capture of detailed cellular data, and particularly looking at how different cells have reacted to the introduction of different small molecules or genetic perturbants, such that one can compare and identify similarities between different drugs in these kind of experiments. However, this kind of data can be generated at such scale that manually inspecting such data isn't feasible. Instead, automation is necessary. So to extract information from these types of images, machine learning and more classical image analysis methods have been utilized. This, however, is quite challenging as different technical artifacts and variations between batches and data being generated at different time points and physical locations cause large domain shifts that makes the comparison between data points from different laboratories or even different time points on the same from the same laboratory is hard to compare. So there's really a need for robust and adaptable models that can effectively generalize and extract features across different contexts and different conditions. And this is a point where existing machine learning methods fail to generalize. So what we suggest in this paper is what we call cross-batch online domain adaptation, also termed CODA. Which is a new online domain adaptation method using self-supervision. This method relies on a dual model approach where we have a separate feature extractor and a separate classifier, in this case, two VITs that are stacked on top of each other. So these are trained in 3 steps. The first step relies on training the feature extractor using self-supervision. With the in-domain data. The second step then follows where the feature extractor is locked and trained for a particular task, in this case classification task, with the in-domain labels. And then in the third step, when tasked with generalizing into a new domain, we update the feature extractor using self-supervision while keeping the classifier frozen, such that the features are adapted to the out-of-domain distribution and the classifier, the features that are fed to the classifiers are aligned with those that it would expect. We suggest 2 different approaches for this, one which we call ODA and another one CODA, with the difference being the self-supervised training technique we use. And in ODA it's dyno, and in CODA it is what's called cross-batch consistency learning. So to evaluate and compare our method, we rely on a data from the JUMP Cell Painting Consortium, where we focus on the task of mechanism of action prediction. So the JUMP Cell Painting Consortium includes data from a number of different institutes and companies throughout the world, imaging data using different microscopes and settings, and throughout a number of different time points. And the same data has been imaged multiple times across several institutes and times, making it an ideal choice for studying these kind of domain shifts. So what we do is we compare the performance of different methods for transferring between such institutes and particularly evaluate it for the very relevant task of mechanism of action prediction. So the primary results are evaluated on how well we can train in one source and generalize to another. And what we see is, in line with our expectations, the generalization performance of a supervised model is very low when going from one domain to another. We see that In some cases, when training in one and transferring to another, the performance drop can be as high as 84%. So this is kind of the motivation behind our work, and what we see is when we introduce this dual approach, where we also have an alignment step using self-supervision, we find that the generalization performance improves significantly. And this is not only in one or two settings, but across all settings. So transferring from one source to another can be done without too much of a performance difference. And this is particularly true when we use the CODA method with a cross-batch consistency learning, where we see a performance improvement of up to 230% on average compared to the supervised baseline. Beyond the primary results, we also carry out a number of analysis and ablations and study the design choices. Without going too deep into this, but while briefly discussing this, we see that the data granularity used when doing this third step of the training, the alignment in the out-of-domain data, can be done using a number of different data settings. Everything from a full source of data covering multiple batches being generated at the same place on multiple different plates, but also just aligning with a single plate can really boost the performance. And it seems to indicate that this alignment step is really helpful in making sure that the classifier works well. And this is also something we see when we look at how the feature space is affected. So when going from in-domain, in this leftmost case here, we have a clear structure where different mechanisms of action are separated. But when moving out of domain without aligning, much of this structure is lost, but then regained upon alignment, indicating that this really helps. So to summarize, the study objective was really to see how we can address generalization gaps in high content imaging and tackle the challenge of performance loss when moving from in to out of domain data, so between different laboratories, for example. To tackle this, we suggest the method CODA, which uses online domain adaptation using self-supervision in order to align the features in the out-of-domain data. We tested this on a diverse set of data coming from a multitude of different centers and being generated with different microscopes and settings. And our key takeaways is really that we see that CODA can improve performance significantly across a wide variety of settings, in some cases by more than 300% compared to the supervised classifier baseline. And this really indicates that this method of realigning the features in out-of-domain data for high-content imaging can be a really fruitful direction. And we expect that with more innovative self-supervised learning methods, this can further be used to bridge the generalization gap in high-content imaging. Finally, I just want to acknowledge my funding from the Wallenberg AI Autonomous Systems and Software Program. And please check out the paper for more details.